Hi there. Welcome to Everything Accordion, a podcast about the musical box known around the world as the accordion. My name is Ghenadie Rotari, and I will be your host on the show. On this podcast, you will hear a bit about the instrument's history, the different types of instruments of its very extended family, stories from and about accordionists, stories about contemporary music and historical works of its repertoire, discussions with colleagues from all over the world, interviews with prominent musicians, and much more. In this first episode of the podcast, I would like to present myself to you, dear listeners. My name is Ghenadie. I come from a very small country in Eastern Europe called the Republic of Moldova, neighboring with Romania on the western side and Ukraine in the east. I started playing the accordion when I was 9 years old. And the way it happened is quite funny. It's the instrument that chose me. It wasn't me who chose the instrument. I remember doing many schools and courses, such as languages, swimming, dancing, karate. So quite a lot of things which could be considered hobbies. One day, my mom heard a piano concert on television, and she thought it would be an interesting and useful skill for me to develop and to learn. So she asked me, would you like to learn how to play the piano? I replied, sure, why not? One thing more, one thing less. Couldn't hurt. The next day she went to the Municipal Music School number 3 in Chisinau, the capital of Republic of Moldova, and asked about the piano class. They told her that there were no free places in the piano class, but that there was one free spot for accordion. But I would also do complementary piano, so I would learn how to play two instruments at the same time, which was really great. That's how I was introduced to the accordion for the first time. I don't remember much from my first couple of years playing the accordion. I remember that I was pretty much obliged by my parents to sit down and practice every day, at least 1 hour. What I remember from those days is a system of practicing, which my accordion teacher told me to do. And it consisted in putting aside a match or colored sticks used in kindergarten for learning how to count. Every single time I repeated a passage or a bar or a section. So I needed to put aside 10 or 20 of those so that I would get it better, and when I got 10 or 20 of those, I could move onwards from there. Another phrase which clings on to me even today, that I remember from those days, is my teacher saying, remember Gena. Gena is a diminutive of my name in Russian. Remember that you need to be ready to play your pieces. Even if somebody comes at 3 o'clock in the night, wakes you up, you need to be ready to play them. The mindset created by this phrase actually saved me in a lot of situations, most prominently during my entrance exam at the Conservatory of Trieste, but perhaps this is a story for another episode of the podcast. I remember during my third year in the music school, I had one new subject which I needed to attend, and it was the accordion orchestra. I started off at the back of the orchestra, so the so-called fourth accordion, which is mainly playing basses and accompaniment, kind of like the double basses are doing in normal orchestras. After a few months, I went on to the third accordion section. The following year, I was sort of promoted to the second accordion. It could be compared to the second violin section of a classical orchestra. And in my last year at the music school, so 2 years later, I reached what I thought to be the Olympus of playing in an accordion orchestra. So I was in the first accordion section, who were the soloists of the orchestra. All the while I was studying at the music school, I actually never once considered the accordion to be a career choice, but rather a very nice hobby which I could do parallel to something else. I come from a family of non-musicians, so the most obvious career choice for me was to become what they wanted me to become, a doctor, well, more specifically, a dentist. Going back to the accordion orchestra of the music school, we got the chance, thanks to our director and conductor, to travel a lot around Europe and perform in festivals and competitions. And it was actually very nice. We travel everywhere by bus. Most prominently, I remember going to Portugal by bus from the Republic of Moldova, which is a 5-day ride there. Basically, 2 weeks of traveling with only 4 days at the destination place. So yeah, going back to the orchestra, we had the chance to travel a bit. So we went to Russia, St. Petersburg, to the Czech Republic, Germany, Portugal, and Finland. All of these events made me realize that the accordion was much more than a folk instrument. Nothing against folk instrument, I adore it, but the choices in the Republic of Moldova were either you play in a taraf, which is a folk music ensemble, or you do a different job. The crucial trip for my future was in 2005 when we went to participate in a festival in Finland, in a small city of Ikaalinen, where they organize an accordion festival every year, or at least they used to organize before the pandemic. Everything about the festival fascinated me. And the country was amazingly beautiful. I enjoyed it a lot. So much so that I returned for 6 months as an Erasmus student at the Sibelius Academy in Helsinki. And I enjoyed it again very much. Going back to 2005, one night some of my colleagues decided to go and listen to a concert. They said that it was a living legend of the accordion. So that got me curious. And I said, well, perhaps it's really worth going and listening to it. After the concert, which lasted for about 2 hours, I came outside of the concert hall and I knew what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. The concert was amazing. I have heard the French accordionist Richard Gallieno, with his septet, performing a program of music by Astor Piazzolla called Piazzolla Forever. I remember telling to myself that I wanted to become just like him, and this phrase motivated me to go on and practice harder, learn more. I imitated him a lot, so I learned most of the pieces that he wrote and he performed. I fell in love with Piazzolla's music, I fell in love with his music, and it was something that gave me the drive to go forward in this career. So at around the age of 14, I started to practice seriously and had Gallieno and Piazzolla as role models for the next 4 years. Then I later moved to Italy to study at the United World College of the Adriatic, which had nothing to do with music. It was a great chance to move to a country which had more to offer than my home country, so I took that chance. In 2009, I enrolled at the Conservatory of Trieste in the class of Corrado Royaz, who was and still is an important figure in my education as a musician. I truly hope that I can have him on the show at some point. So I completed my bachelor's and master's degrees under his guidance, and he's the one who made me fall in love with Baroque music and understand and love contemporary music. As I mentioned previously, in 2014 I did an Erasmus exchange semester at the Sibelius Academy in Helsinki with Professor Matti Rantanen, who I also hope to have on the show. Later, in 2015, I got accepted into the new music department of the Hochschule für Musik und Theater in München, in Germany, in the class of Krasimir Sterev. I am currently teaching accordion at a music school in Austria, Musikschule Montafon, and at the same international school I graduated back in 2010. I hope I didn't lose you, dear listener, and that my story about how I became an accordionist didn't bore you. I promise this is the only episode in which I will speak about myself at such great lengths. So now, let's move on to talk a bit about the history of the accordion. Fisharmonika, harmonica, bayan, Knopfakkordeon, accordion are all referred to a family of box-shaped musical instruments of a bellows-driven, free-reed aerophone type. So the three main parts of an accordion are the right keyboard, the left keyboard, and the bellows in between. The bellows acts as the heart and the lung of the instrument. The way the accordion produces a sound works with the help of the air. When we press a button or a key on the accordion, a pallet raises and opens up a very small hole through which the air passes when we push or pull the bellows, and this air comes into contact with the small metallic tongues inside the instrument of varying sizes. The air makes these reeds vibrate, and that produces the sound of the accordion. Briefly about the history of the instrument. The first registered patent for the accordion is from 1829. So the accordion is a very young instrument compared to piano, cello, and violin, for example. And it was registered in Vienna by a musical instrument manufacturer called Cyril Demian. The first accordion was a very small box with only 6 buttons in the right side and no buttons in the left side, connected with a small bellows. The way it worked was when you opened the bellows, it would continuously sound a dominant fifth harmony, and when you closed the bellows, it would play a tonic harmony. When you pressed a button in the right-hand side and you opened the bellows, it was one note or one sound. When you closed the bellows, the same button produced a different sound. A much older relative of the accordion is the Chinese instrument called sheng, also an aerophonic reed instrument, free reed instrument, which is believed to have arrived in Europe around 1777. The instrument dates back to around 1000 BCE, so it's much more ancient than the accordion. In the next decades, the instrument was expanded and improved up until to arrive to the instrument that we know today in Germany around 1912 and in Russia around 1904. From the beginning until the middle of the 20th century, one invention has made the accordion slowly become accepted as a concert instrument, and it was the invention of the free bass system. We will talk about this briefly. So we have 2 different types of most commonly used instruments. The first one is the piano accordion, and the second one is the button accordion. A piano accordion is an accordion that has piano keys in the right keyboard, so that's pretty straightforward. When you see piano keys, you know it's a piano accordion. A button accordion has buttons on both sides, and in the right-hand manual, the buttons are arranged chromatically. That's why sometimes it's also called the chromatic accordion, or in Russia, there's a variant that's called the bayan. So the buttons are arranged chromatically at a half a tone distance from one another. On the other hand, literally, we have many buttons, and it's common for both types of instruments. These buttons, most commonly in concert instruments, are 120, and they are arranged in 6 rows with 20 buttons each. Now, in the left hand, we have 2 different systems, a so-called standard bass system, which was the most common, and still is, actually, and the free bass system. How does a standard bass system work? The 2 inner rows in the left hand, with the buttons, are bass buttons, arranged at a perfect fifth interval between one another, going upwards. And the other 4 rows are for chords. We have a row for major chords, we have a row for minor chords, we have a row for dominant 7th chords, and we have a row for diminished chords. So each bass, each sound, has 4 different harmonies. 4 harmonies, 12 notes, 48 harmonies in total. This was seen as a limitation by many composers and many performers, and that's what prompted the invention and the development of the free bass system. Now, the free bass system basically converts all of the chord buttons in the 4 rows into separate different notes, with the use of a bigger button called the converter button. So what happens when you push this converter button? It transforms each of the chord buttons into single notes, spanning over a range of more than 4 octaves. Now, what is common for both left hand and right hand in button accordions is the different types of systems that you have also there. So you would have the so-called B system, the so-called C system. The B system is called that way because you have the button C in the middle row, and the C system has the C in the outer row. Now, what changes between these two systems in the right hand of a button accordion is not only the way the buttons are arranged, but also the different positions that one needs to learn in order to perform on an accordion. On the left hand, it's a little bit more dramatic, because you would have in the B system, also known as the Russian system, very widely used in Eastern Europe, the lower notes are in the lower part of the instrument, and the higher pitches, the higher notes, are in the upper part of the instrument. So it's contrary to the right hand manual. We go in opposite directions. If you are with a C system accordion, free bass system accordion, it means that you have the lower notes, the lower pitches in the upper part of the instrument, and the higher pitches in the lower part of the instrument. So the two keyboards are like a mirror to one another. They go in parallel direction. Many people misuse the term bayan, the Russian term bayan. What is important to remember is that a bayan is a button accordion with the B system in both manuals, in both keyboards. So considering the fact that the accordion has such a recent development, also the repertoire, the original repertoire for the instrument, is very young and very recent. The first time the accordion was used by a serious composer was in 1922, and it was used by Alban Berg in his opera Wozzeck, in the second act, in the fourth scene. If you haven't seen the opera, it's the bar scene, where Wozzeck goes to find the general to talk to him, and Alban Berg wanted to include the accordion in that scene as a folk instrument, so that it gave the impression of being in a rural area bar. Another work written in the same year, in 1922, was by Paul Hindemith. It was a chamber music piece called Kammermusik No. 1, and it was written actually for the free bass accordion. A fun fact about that piece was that at the time there were no accordionists with skills developed enough and good enough to actually perform the piece, so the premiere of the work had to wait several years. The first pieces for accordion solo with standard bass system are dated to 1949 in Germany. The first work for accordion solo only with free bass is considered Toccata No. 1 by Ulle Schmidt, and is from 1960. So the original repertoire of the concert accordion is actually 60 years old, 61. The first avant-garde work is considered to be Anatomic Safari by Per Nørgaard, which explored all of the many sonoric possibilities and sound possibilities of the instrument, and it dates to 1967. The first work which gained international recognition and put the accordion as a concert instrument on concert series stages was Sofia Gubaidulina's De Profundis from 1978. So we've covered a little bit the basics of how the accordion works, the different types of the most commonly used accordions, and we talked a little bit about its history. In future episodes, we will also discuss about the relatives of the accordion, such as bandoneons, the different types of harmonicas used all over the world, and I'm sure that in discussions with my colleagues on the podcast, many interesting themes will be brought up. Thank you for listening to Everything Accordion. Tune in 2 weeks' time for another episode of the podcast. Future episodes will feature information about the different types of accordions, how they work, curiosities, as well as many prominent colleagues who will talk about their experiences, their projects, and their view on the accordion in the past, today, and in the future. If you liked this episode, feel free to share it with your friends, colleagues, and on social media. If you would like to support the show, you can become a supporter on Patreon. Just click on the link in the description of the episode, and it will direct you to my Patreon channel, where you can become a cool, awesome, or VIP level patron, or you can donate whichever amount you would like in exchange for exclusive content, polls, behind the scenes moments, music, concerts, and much more. Thank you again for listening.